Hello, stupid.
Hi, welcome to Tell Me Like I'm Stupid. How are you today, Tom?
Hi, I'm good. I don't know why I always do that when my voice when we start like hi.
It's your podcast host voice.
Yeah, it's my call for listeners. You
Yeah,
know,
I
like you
like
do like
it.
hunting calls.
Oh, yeah. Your
That's the one.
mating
Like I
call.
wanted it to. Yeah, exactly. Justin loves it.
Sure. No, actually, someone once told me they love your voice. They were like,
Who
"Oh,
told
he
you that?
has a podcast." Remember when we taught together? I told you when we taught together. I bumped into one of our students afterwards, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I love Tom. He has such a good voice."
Oh, I'm sure you did tell me that you're
Yeah.
not the
You
type
just
to
want to
hold
hear
back
it
on telling
again.
it. Yeah, exactly. How are you today?
I am good. I'm excited for this episode you have for me. Excited to be blown away.
Yeah, I'm very excited too, actually. I spent so much more time researching than I expected. But I'm excited. I hope I do it justice.
You will. I believe in you.
Thank you.
And since it's your day to explain something to me like I'm stupid, it's my turn to start this call off with an icebreaker, the only way I know how.
Correct. Go ahead. With
So,
jazzers.
if you would describe yourself as an emoji, what emoji would you
Oh my
use?
god. Okay, that's a good one. Um, Side note, did you see that you can like mash up some emojis together now with Google emojis? Probably not because you're an iPhone user.
I know. I was like, wait, what's even Google
It's
emojis?
called Emoji Kitchen, and you can take like, say, I want the devil face and the sticky tongue face, and mash them together, and you have a devil with a sticky tongue.
I love it. Okay, I guess we can play on that. You can make your own emoji,
Okay,
and then we'll post it on our Instagram page.
okay,
People can see which emoji you'd make your emoji mashup.
okay. PG-13, right?
Yeah, it's like an eggplant with glasses on it.
Because I don't use emojis much. Okay, that's not true. I use emojis all the time. Can okay. I want a mashup of the cry laughing face and the sobbing face because I feel like that's an emotion I relate to a lot where like it hurts so much, but it's also so funny.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
We'll make up a mashup if we can, and follow us and check us out on Instagram at Tell Me Like I'm Stupid to see what it looked like.
Okay. I like that. And what are you cooking up in your emoji kitchen?
Okay, so mine would be like the little like nice face with the hearts all around it. There's like three hearts.
Like I see it as like a receiving love face.
I feel like it's just like feeling the love.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
while like the heart eye one is like horny love, this is like I just love.
yeah. Okay.
But then mashed up with the tongue, the little
Yeah.
tongue,
Like the side tongue?
the side tongue. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I like how I did it, thinking people can see it.
Right. I was like, I guess I'll describe what Sanya's doing at me right now.
Yeah. So like feeling the
Okay, I like
love,
that.
but a little playful at the same time.
Yeah, it's like feeling the love but deflecting with humor.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that for you. Great. Well, since I have a heavy subject, not a heavy, but like
Ooh,
long,
heavy subject.
long subject today. I think I'm gonna jump right in. Um, Also, maybe heavy. We'll see.
Oh god, am I gonna cry? Do I need a buffy tissue?
No, 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 no. For once, it's not targeted at you. Okay, I think it plays into our title. Also, tell me like I'm stupid. Because well, let me ask you this first. Do you consider yourself as smart?
I that's a good question. I always say that I'm street smart, not book smart.
Interesting. Okay, what would you say that?
I'm not like I'm not I am smart. Yeah, I'm like I have intellect to me. I can get deep, but I'm not someone that can do 100 times 100 in her head that quickly, you know? Or
Right, right,
like
right.
I think like I have a lot of intuition and like I'm observant, but it's just hard for like I've never been book smart, you
Yeah,
know? And I think like I always kind of I'm easily put off as like a blonde, like a dumb blonde, even though
yeah, yeah.
I'm Indian, but I do have some blonde in my hair.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, I wouldn't say I'm traditionally smart, but I'm definitely not stupid.
Yeah. I mean, this won't be a shocker to you because this always ends up like this, but I think I know exactly what you're saying because I feel exactly the same.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like people who like socially, people don't necessarily consider me smart at all. Maybe like even a little bit dumb or just very average. But I think like, oh, once you get to know me a little bit and get to see me in a situation where I have to like the problem solve or stuff like that, like all of a sudden I'm like people are kind of shocked by like my ability to handle situations.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I think you're smart.
Well,
Um
that's I have some receipts. Nice of you to say that now on air, but I remember actually I don't remember much of the details, but at one time I was calling you on the phone. I was telling you about a situation with Justin. Like not an argument, because I've never really argued with Justin, but like more like me and Justin were calibrating on something. And I think I said something along the lines like, "Well, I think I'm really lucky to have him because he's more experienced on this than I am," or something like that. And you said like, "Well, yeah," and I feel like Justin is much smarter than you.
I was like, while you were saying this, I was like, oh God, what did I say?
and, and the worst part is that I just went with it as like, "Yeah, no, you're right. Justin is much smarter than me." Which like Justin is very smart. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like I can hold my own.
I don't know if you'd agree, but I feel like, and I feel like this with Avril too, like they're book smarter than us, but we're street
Yes.
smarter.
Yes.
Like,
Like very, very Justin's very, very analytical. Um and
exactly.
he like computes data really well. Which like is yeah, exactly. I would say like book smart I find is I
Is
don't
that
know
a
if he
dated
would
term?
identify to that because um academically he struggles sometimes because of ADHD,
Hmm.
but he's still very much more of that scientific analytical brain.
Exactly, which I don't even comprehend the scientific analytical side in my head, but I know like Avril can. But I think we
Hold
are
on a second.
very,
Do we both struggle with that word?
did I say it weird? Analytical.
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 Sorry, go on.
I
Yep,
was
got it.
gonna
That's the one.
say, but I know our emotional intelligence is out of this world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like we can sense that out, you
Yeah.
know?
Um. Still though, because I'm a bit vindictive. Jesus, what is wrong today? That's going to be a long episode. Vindictive. Is that the one?
Vindictive.
Vindictive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vindictive. Um, Justin's going to tell me for. Justin's going to kill me for telling you this. But when
Ooh.
when um when we were started thinking of starting the podcast, and I was telling the concept to Justin, he was like, um, he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I like it. I like the idea. But like, is Sanya smart?
I
Like,
ask myself that every day, Justin.
like, could she handle that concept? Like, could she?" It was hilarious, and he like regretted it all like immediately, and he was like, "Oh no, that's what when I went was like, is she gonna like it?" I'm not even gonna try to like find
No,
an
but like
explanation.
I
But
get it. Like I get what he meant, and he's like, does she can she compute what she's saying at the speed you can almost right? Like are our intelligence levels matching,
yeah, and I
right?
mean, in my mind, they are 100%. We're both equally stupid.
Yeah, and that's how we explain things to each other.
Exactly, full circle. All right. Well, so that's what we're talking about today. If you haven't clued in yet, we're talking about intelligence. At
Ooh.
first, I was very my incline was to be gear like to research like book smart and street smart and differences and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
quickly took another turn, and I think a much more interesting turn in my time in my mind.
Ooh.
Yeah. So let's start with what intelligence is. Can you tell me, maybe in your words, what is intelligence?
Trying to make me look stupid here.
I would
um
never.
Honestly, I can't give you proper definitions for intelligence, but what I'll say to me is like intelligence comes from the word intel, right? And like kind of like how much intel someone has, like how educated they are in a way.
Oh,
Um
interesting.
that's how I would define it. That is crazy. I can't define intelligence. Like
Well,
I could say like how smart they are, but that's just a
that's just
synonym.
deflecting the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Well, I will tell you that you're not crazy. It's incredibly hard to define
Yes.
intelligence.
I am intelligent.
Yeah. So the definition of intelligence is actually quite controversial.
Mhm.
Researchers can't agree on what are the abilities that come in play into intelligence and how to measure them. It has been defined in many ways, like the capacity for abstraction, for logic, understanding, self awareness, learning, emotional knowledge, reasoning, planning, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, um, and like all of the above as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's very complex and hard to define it. And I think there's as many definitions for intelligence as there is researchers on the subject. Like everyone have their own kind of definition, right?
Mhm.
In 1995, however, the American Psychological Association published the following statement in a report called Intelligence, Knowns and Unknowns. Individuals differs from one another in the ability to understand complex ideas, to adapt effectively to environment, to learn from experiences, to engage in various forms of reasoning, to overcome obstacles by taking thoughts. Although these individuals differs can differ sorry, although these individual differences my god.
I'm sorry, I was trying so hard.
No. I swear to god, it's gonna be
You got it. You got it.
yeah. Although these individual differences can be substantial.
It's the way you started that line, I
I know.
think.
Um, can be substantial. They are never entirely consistent. A given person's intellectual performance will vary on different occasions in different domains as judged by different criteria. Concepts of intelligence are attempts to clarify and organize this complex set of phenomena. Jeez.
That
And I have so many
was
notes
almost a
today. I'm
rap.
going to struggle so much. That
I
was the
know
most.
you did this to yourself.
I know I did do this to myself. Um, yeah. So, what did you get from that? Can you summarize it for everyone who tuned out?
I am still stuck on those words.
Okay, so basically, everyone has different ability to understand complex ideas,
Okay.
and to adapt to their environment and to learn. But also, everyone's abilities differ uh, um, from context and from moments, right?
Mhm.
And then that big complex interaction is what people try to clarify when they say intelligence,
Yeah.
right? Um, but also there's theories of multiple intelligence. So instead of having that one concept of intelligence, of we all have one thing common, and it's a varying intelligence, it's more that we have all different types of intelligence.
Yeah.
So this was first proposed by Howard Gardner, and he introduced that first 8 type of intelligence. So you have musical, visual and spatial, linguistic, logical and mathematical, bodily and kinesthetic, interpersonal. Interpersonal is like empaths,
Like us.
like us. I'm an empath. Sorry. Intrapersonal, which is introspective,
Hmm.
and naturalistic, which is like survival skills, or like farming, good with the land, stuff like that.
What was that? Visual and what?
Visual, spatial,
What's
like to
spatial?
visualize in space, to have a concept of space, uh,
Oh, okay.
space in the sense of like the distance,
Hmm.
right? Um, Generally, linguistic and logical abilities are what people consider as intelligence when we speak about like someone who's smart. That's what is typically um, brought to mind.
Yeah.
Whereas like artistic or musical or athletic abilities are considered more skills. So Gardner, what he was trying to change with his theory of multiple intelligence, is to bring all these abilities and talents out of the skills sphere, and have them considered as intelligence.
Hmm.
It's very interesting, and I think it's something that's very maybe inclusive that we can all relate to. However, it's contested because there's very low evidence to support this. Um, like it's just not easy to test for. It's very,
Yeah.
very abstract and theoretical.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like testing for intelligence in general is just gonna be hard because the person might be so intelligent they're throwing you off on purpose. You know? They're like they're so smart that they're like they're gonna use me as a weapon of mass destruction. So I'm gonna fail these tests, you know?
uh, I do know, and I can personally relate to that fact. Yeah, so the concept of intelligence can also be different through cultures, also, right? It doesn't mean the same depending on where you are in the world. And as I said, there's like as many definitions as there's researchers. But in Western culture, we tend to be focused very much on the analytical and logical. But that's also recent. Like maybe a few centuries ago, we were focused more on linguistic. Like, for example, I think I don't know when. It was quite recent, actually. I don't remember when, but Oxford University recently dropped Latin as a prerequisite for entering the like university,
Okay, interesting. I didn't even know that was a prerequisite.
right?
And Latin is
So
like a not relevant language really anymore, you know?
no, it hasn't been for centuries.
Yeah. Interesting that they had that.
So even within the same culture, the definition can change a lot,
Mhm.
right? Um, what most scientists tend to agree on, however, is that intelligence is the most complex phenomenon we know of in general.
Yeah.
The human brain is comprised of about 100 billion neurons, which interact in a highly complex pattern. Um, and we tend to believe that intelligence is stems from the brain activity. As for everything in the body, actually, I don't know why I was so hesitant for that, but isn't everything? Maybe not,
Yeah.
actually.
Well, yeah, it does stem from brain activity, but it also stems from your surroundings, your levels. Like, even though, like, you could be born with the best brain in the world, if you weren't sent to school, it's not going to be operating at the same function as someone who is sent to, like, Ivy League school.
Look at that. You are
Whoa,
smart.
is that your point? Well, without research, look at
I
me.
know. I wasted my day on this. You could just like instinctively drove us through it. Uh, to finish with the definition of its intelligence, today many scientists see intelligence more as the same way as they view personality, which I thought was really interesting. For example, David Condon, a psychologist, says, "I was like, how do you?" I'm sorry. I'm gonna like hyper focus on how I just pronounce that name.
Condon?
Condon.
Condon?
Condon? David Con? No,
I'm
you
the
made it
wrong
worse.
person to ask.
All right,
Condon.
David.
Condon?
Dave. Dave. What he said was,
Dave C.
yeah, Dave C. Intelligence is a tool that people draw upon as strategy for navigating life. So, given one's life's problem, one person might lean heavily on cognitive ability, another might lean heavily on agreeableness, or find someone to help them, to give you advice, or to point you in the right direction. And those are all tools that you would draw upon your intelligence to come up with these solutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could vary from the same way personality is going to vary from one person to another.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was I think that's my favorite way to look at it
That makes
as a
sense.
personality trait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is, right? If you think of it, like your personality kind of comes from, like, it's not like in your genes how you develop your personality. So I think that's the same way with your intelligence. It's how
Mm-hmm.
much work you put into it almost.
Mm-hmm. And what were the outside influences, the inside influences? What is the current context? All these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I found before we dive into the deep of it, I found this really interesting research actually. Basically, everyone thinks they're smart.
Yeah.
So, right, like we just both established that we think that we're decently smart. But there's researchers, they examined how people estimate their own intelligence, so like self test intelligence or self assessed intelligence. And so what they did is they asked participants how they would score on a psychometry test, and then tested them after that, right? So most people believe that they would score above average, but of course that's not what happens because we know that's not how average works, right?
Yeah.
So most people guessed wrong. What was interesting is that smart people could guess appropriately how smart they were,
Oh.
but less smart people could not. So smart people guessed right that they were smart, but less smart people, I shouldn't say smart, I should say people who scored highly on the psychometry test guessed appropriately that they would score highly. People who scored low also guessed that they would score highly.
That makes sense.
So
What
this
kind
is
of test was this?
uh, psychometry test. They didn't go into the details of what test it was, but what test do you think they could use for intelligence?
I have no clue. That's why I'm so curious.
You don't?
No.
I'm sure when I talk about it later, it's going to ring a bell.
Okay.
Um, okay, so what was interesting is that, well, okay, so they refer to this as the Dunning-Kruger effect. So basically, people with low capacity overestimated their abilities because they lack the capacity to recognize their own lack of competency. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, dumb people were too dumb to even realize that they were dumb. Right?
That's a good way to put it.
Right? Thank you.
Now I'm
Uh,
so confused. What if we're dumb?
exactly. That's what I'm going at. I'm getting at. But it gets worse, Saniya. It gets worse
Oh
because
god.
in this study, participants were also asked to estimate other people's intelligence. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And researchers realized that people who tested um, smarter usually guessed appropriately the other's capacities without biases. So if you tend to have a high score on your own test, you were typically good at guessing other people's scores without too many biases. But people who thought that they would test high um, had very strong biases in judging other people's capacities. So basically,
Interesting.
um, testing smarter usually correlated with less racism, sexism, etc. Thinking that you were going to be smarter, having that superior thought, usually correlated with more racism and sexism, and etc.
That's insane.
Isn't it? So
That's insane,
we're,
but I'm not surprised.
I know, but what's crazy is that, like, how do you know without testing? Either we are both smart and good people, or we're dumb and terrible.
Well, I'm still gonna go with I'm smart because I'm not racist, sexist,
I believe so
or
too.
anything. So
Yeah.
I'll put that out there.
All right. Um, but you did ask how they measured intelligence, how they test it, right?
Yeah.
Well, there is many tests that are put in place. Some are more specific, some are more general.
Mhm.
The most popular general one is the IQ test.
Mhm. Which I hear a lot about. I feel like a lot of podcasts I listen to, they'll the criminal will be put through an IQ test and they'll find out their IQ is really
Mm,
low and
mm.
then they cannot stand up at trial kind of thing, you know?
That is one popular way that it is used, the IQ test
Mhm.
in legal settings
Mhm.
to determine if someone is basically intellectually deficient,
Yeah.
right? So what do you know about IQ tests?
Honestly, not much. I don't think I've ever done one. I'm curious to know what's the highest rating that you can get where I would fall.
Right? Yeah, I don't think I've done an official one because they have to be administered by a psychologist.
Okay.
But I've done some mock-ups online and stuff like that when I was like teenager. I was curious.
Mhm.
In my memory, I remember scoring high, but
Mhm.
that's, both a cheap online version and my skewed memory.
And you googling the answers or
Yeah.
doing it with a calculator.
So IQ tests, what they measure a variety of skills like working memory, fluid reasoning, verbal comprehension. However, they focus mainly on analytical skills.
Mhm.
Analytical skills
I
like problem solving and academic skills.
feel like problem solving I can answer like usually good unless there's math involved.
Right. So, what kind of problem can you solve? Well, I know you're
Um
bragging. I'm going to put you on the spot.
okay, I those tests I had to do this for a job once where it's like there's an R
Yeah.
and then it gives you like 10 different R's on the side and it's like if the R was flipped and 180 degrees switch, which R would it be? Have you done one of those?
Yeah, yeah, plenty. But
Those are
that's not problem solving. That's visual spatial.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
What would be a problem solving one? Like Samantha went to a store and had five oranges?
yeah,
No. That's
yeah.
math.
Well, it could be that math is still problem solving. Math is
True.
very very problem solving based, but it also could be um, I don't know. Say Kelly brought her food to work in an orange Tupperware with a blue top, and Adam brought his food to work in a blue Tupperware with an orange top. By accident, Adam ate Kelly's lunch. How would he go about?
Where are you going with
Kelly has lunch in 1 hour. What does Adam do?
I
That's a problem solving.
apologize. Apologize, buy her lunch, offer him yours.
Wait, should I write IQ tests?
Oh my god.
Right. Anyways, so I mean, problem solving in general. Moving on. Let's not linger on that one. So how did it work? Okay, so the average score of the population on the test is then calibrated to come up to 100.
Okay.
And then what they found is that 68% of the population has a score between 85 or 115. So a
Okay.
variation of 15 in either way from the average score,
Hmm.
right? If you score below 70, that would indicate an intellectual disability from mild to profound, depending on the score. And if you score 30 or above, you would be considered to have a superior intellect. It's like gifted, right? And that represents a roughly 2% of the population.
Hmm.
Um, Fun fact: the gifted score is needed if you want to join some elite organizations. For example, like Mensa, which is dedicated to identifying, researching, and fostering intelligence. They make you pass an IQ test, and you have to have 130 or more to be admitted.
Did you have gifted kids in your school?
Um, I well, I was a little bit.
You were a gifted kid?
I mean, a little bit. It
It's
depends.
almost like you're speaking like you
Untested.
were an X-Men or something.
I know. um, yeah, I was abnormally. School was abnormally easy for me.
Insane. Oh, we're so alike except that part. I think like growing up, I used to think I was very smart because my sister was.
Right,
And like when I moved here from Dubai, we like learned at a higher level. So I actually like they made me stay back a grade
right.
because my age was to be in grade 4, but I'd done grade 4 in Dubai. So they were like, "Oh, let's see how smart you are." So they like wanted to keep me in grade 4 for a week, and in my head, I was like, "There's no way I'm going to stay in grade 4.
Yeah.
I'm obviously going to grade 5." But I wasn't that smart.
That's
Like
devastating.
it wasn't like, "Oh, she's not that smart. Let's just keep her here." I think they were just like, "Oh, like she fits in better with people her age."
Was
Um,
school in Dubai in English?
yes,
Oh, so no excuses there.
I know. And I just wasn't that smart, and then I still refused to believe it. To like I my friends were going to like a French immersion slash like gifted slash like IB. I don't even know what
Yeah.
IB stands for, but it was just like school. And they all applied for it. So I told my parents I wanted to go. I didn't get into gifted. I didn't get into IB, but I got into French immersion,
Okay.
which was like nice. But like I was trying so hard to be gifted that I like joined the chess club just so I could
Oh
like
my
be with the gifted
god.
kids, but I wasn't smart. And in high school, I was like, fuck this.
That's so funny. Me was the opposite. I was trying really hard to blend in and to like not attract attention to it.
That's insane.
Also, I had for high school passed I took the test for in Quebec. It was like Enrichi. It's like enrich program.
Okay.
Um, and I found out only recently that I actually passed the test, but the reasons that I didn't get in was because I was out of district.
Oh,
But
how'd you
I
find out after this long?
So I was talking to my mom, and she's like, "No, you passed it." And I was like, "What?" I thought, and like, I don't know why. I won't blame mom on this one, but I thought all this time that I had failed.
Oh, man.
But they had moved us school into a school that was outside of district, and there was limited spaces in the gifted program, and they prioritized people who were in district.
That's crazy.
And that's why I didn't get in. And like I was so intimidated at that test because these kids had all studied all summer long. They were bragging about the answers that they knew and stuff like that. I was not prepared for it. The test seemed very weird and complicated, and I apparently got in.
That's insane. Good for you.
Thank you. Who's bragging now?
What if your mom's just lying to you now? She's like, oh, 30 years later and he hasn't let it go. Yeah, you got in.
Could you imagine? I mean, easily. Anyways, back to IQ tests. They are controversial in the states today, but they are still being used for school admission and for health decisions also, so related to your mental health. Um, a lot of the tests don't go into a lot of detail about how they do the scoring, so it's kind of hard to have that information because of copyright. So they're copywritten, so they
Mhm.
don't show the questions, for example, and stuff like that. IQ tests only measure a narrow part of the spectrum of intelligence, and they exclude factors such as creativity and emotional intelligence, which for me sounded wild because I would think that creativity and emotional intelligence play a huge role in problem solving in real life,
Yeah.
right? Both of them actually, like if there's anyone else involved, emotional intelligence for sure, but creativity, like yeah, you have to dream up solutions all the time.
Mhm.
Anyways, IQ tests are also very sensitive to things like motivation and coaching.
Mhm.
So study shows that um, um, if you you know whether you want to be there or not, obviously you're going to have a different score, but also if you prepare for it, if you practice, you'll get a higher score, right? And also study shows that testing IQ testing works better at reflecting actually the quality of the education of a child rather than their intelligence. So
Yeah.
studies on children who've never been to school, for example, um, they took children who just were out of the schooling system and tested them. And then after putting them only for a couple of months in school, tested them again, and their score had increased by 10 points.
That makes sense.
It does make sense, right? Um, but apparently not for everyone.
School makes people dumber sometimes. I can relate.
So let's talk about the high story. Wow, the history of IQ. Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. It's halfway there, I guess.
You're doing great, sweetie. You're doing great.
Thank you. IQ testing was invented by the French scientist Alfred Binet in 1904. It was invented to identify areas in which a child was struggling in school and where to focus additional support.
Mhm.
Um, in fact, it's still considered today as a very useful tool for measuring a kid's educational progress. So Binet knew that intelligence was way too complex to express in just one number, which is the output of the IQ score of the IQ test. By the way, it's one number your score. Um, and he warned against giving IQ scores too much significance. Right. His plan was just to have a child. If a child scored low in a specific category, he would be able to offer extra help in that field. Um, the goal, his goal was to prevent children from being labeled as cognitively disabled, basically, and sent to psychiatric asylum just because they weren't doing well in school.
Mhm.
Which I was like, wait, were they doing that? That's insane.
I totally believe it. I feel like back in the day, they'd do weird things, right? Like if your
Yeah.
score was too high, you must be a witch, you know?
Well, I can neither confirm or deny. All right, so that was in France in 1904. However, Americans quickly embraced the test and used it to quantify a personal overall intelligence, exactly what the inventor warned against. Um, and of course, this led immediately to discrimination. So IQ scores would be used to justify exclusion of certain immigrants from the US, um, the sterilization of racial minorities,
Oh my god.
and the hiring practice of police departments, for example.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, for example, oh, sorry, not yet, not yet. Later, I'm jumping the gun. I'm so excited. Um, it was used, yeah, to make immigration, segregation, and eugenics policies. Do you know
Mhm.
what eugenics is?
No.
So
Sounds familiar.
yeah, you know of it, but so eugenicists They what they believe is that they can perfect the human being and eliminate the so-called social ills through genetics and heredity. So they
Oh.
believe the use of methods such as sterilization, segregation, and social exclusion could rid societies of individuals deemed to be unfit.
Oh.
So, like, the purity of the race kind of thing. And, like,
Okay.
weaning out bad genes from society with sterilization.
That's insane.
Yep. Yes, it is. Um, the IQ tests were packed back in the days with culturally loaded questions. So, for example, in 1981, I have three question examples here. Let's see how you do, actually.
Oh god, I'm scared.
Crisco is a patent medicine, disinfectant, toothpaste, or food product?
Food product.
Correct. Yeah.
It's like pie filling.
No, it's fat.
Oh, okay.
Right. So another one was Christy Mathewson is a famous a writer, artist, baseball player. Sorry, baseball player, comedian.
Chrissy Mathewson?
Christy Mathewson,
Christy Mathewson. Writer, baseball player,
artist,
artist,
comedian.
comedian. I didn't say baseball player.
You might be right. I never looked up the answers. I forgot to look up the answer.
Like how like you just staring with confidence, like I'm gonna get it
I know,
wrong too.
Mathewson. You're good. Baseball pitcher.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I am good.
Weird nose. I think it was broken a few times in his life. All right. So this was, for example, like questions that were used to evaluate the draftees in World War One. Sorry.
Interesting.
Um, which are very, uh, what's the word? Cultural.
Right? This is in America, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Very
A lot of
American.
immigrants were rejected as being unfit for duty and even labeled mentally defective based on their IQ score. But then later, researchers realized that the tests were only administered in English and that language skills of non native English speaker, ESL, of language second language speakers, affected their score negatively. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
So so obviously, I for me, it's like blows my mind. Like, how do you not even come to those conclusions before administering the test to someone who is struggling to speak the language?
I mean, I don't think it's that they didn't think of it. I think that's how they wanted it.
You'd think so, right? But this is for draftees for World War One.
Yeah,
Although I
true.
guess even then,
Yeah, World War One. Like I'm sure back then they were so racist,
oh yeah, yeah. I
that
mean,
they're like only American blood needs to fight for our country.
yeah. Well, things only got worse.
Oh God.
Low IQ score have been used to justify the government's forced sterilization of individuals with behavioral problems.
Mm.
So between 1933 and 1977, North Carolina implemented
You got it.
a, a eugenics program to reduce welfare and social work. They sterilized people with low IQ. Of these people, 85% were women.
Oh my God.
And of these people, 40% were people of color. In total, 7,600 people were sterilized.
Brutal.
Yeah. And the goal was to reduce welfare and social work, which blows my freaking mind.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, there's people that need help. I guess the solution is to get rid of the people who need help.
Exactly. And that don't fit into a criteria that you're testing. but might
Yeah.
have otherworldly knowledge, you know?
Well, yeah, of course. Um, in Nazi Germany, children who scored low IQ tests were straight up murdered.
Oh no.
Yeah, children.
Brutal. That is brutal.
And we'll get into why people can score lower than others. Um, but despite what we know today about the IQ testing, um, popular culture still refers to IQ tests as the gold standards to measure intelligence. People today still brag about their IQ results, right?
Mhm.
All right. This leads us to everything that's wrong with it still today. So there's a big resurgence of science that claims that some races are more intelligent than other. Um, I'll use the term racist, but like with heavily implied quotation throughout, because even the concept of races is kind of like flawed in the sense that like there's much less genetic variations between us as we think there might be between different social groups. We are still genetically very much all from the same ancestors, right? So even to talk about races is problematic in a sense. Um, so they claim that there's evolutionary basis for gap in social outcome between races, like for example, life expectancies, wealth, incarceration rates. This is heavily focused on North America and the Western world in general.
Mhm.
So that's not a new concept that we see. It happened in history in the past also that we would um, take action based on people's perceived intelligence, um, and it has been debunked also many times in history, but it's making a comeback. Scientists will claim that there's profound biological differences between races, which very contested. That human brains evolve differently from race to race, and that these claims can be supported by average IQ scores.
Hmm.
So they believe that the IQ results are ultimately linked to a person's genes, and they think that the same way a group of population evolved to have different skin tone, they might have evolved to have different brains. Now the problem with that is physically the physical change involved into having a different skin tone usually involves the mutation of one gene, and it spreads quickly among a population group.
Mhm.
Whereas the intelligence measured by IQ quotes um, involves a network of thousands of genes, which would take millennia to evolve.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not the same to say, well, some people evolve to have different skin tone than some people evolve to have different brains.
So like physical characteristics are very different when it comes to genes then.
Much more simple in terms
Okay.
of genes and
Mhm.
can change with a simple mutation versus the brain that is so complex and would take yeah, millennia to change.
That's very interesting.
Isn't it? Because of course, when you present it like that, it's like, oh well, I guess I can see that argument, but then it's like, no, it's actually comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Um, One way to test that theory would be to see if a person can increase their IQ by learning, right? So if they were able to increase their IQ by learning, while the test results are more or less most likely not genetic but environmental. So what do you think the outcome was of that?
What do you mean?
Do you think people can increase their IQ by learning?
Yes, 100%.
Oh yeah, of course, of course they can.
Read a book, people. Read a book. Or listen to
Exactly.
a podcast.
And as a matter of fact, it's a very well known fact that if you practice IQ tests, your score will increase. So if you've done an IQ test in the past and you're not happy with your result, just keep practicing.
Hmm.
Someday you'll get there.
Yeah.
Um, there was research done with 70 students, and half of them were made to practice memory-based video game during a few months, and the half that played that video game, their score improved greatly. Right.
Yeah.
So that's for specific individuals, but what if you are grew? Yeah, but what about it? It doesn't apply the same if you look at the entire population group, right? You could improve one person's score, but not the entire population.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that's wrong too.
Oh,
So IQ tests, like I said earlier, they're calibrated, right, so that the average equals 100, right? Um, in the 90s, a researcher called Jim Flynn, discovered that every generation, the IQ test had to become more challenging in order to maintain that average at 100.
interesting.
So, but people don't change genetically from one generation to another. What did change, however, is that people became more exposed to abstract logic over time. So, either through greater access to culture and arts, or greater access to education, or even advancement of computer science, right? And everyone having a computer at home,
Yeah.
that exposed people more to abstract logic, and they score better in the test. It doesn't mean they became more intelligent either. They only became better at taking the test
Oh.
because they're more used to function in the language that the test is built, right? This has been observed many times across the world. So in Kenya, for example, between 1984 and 1998, the kids' score in the IQ test increased by 26 points. And what happened is that during that period of time, there was a rapid improvement of nutrition, health, and parental literacy throughout the board.
Oh.
So, because all of a sudden kids had better nutrition, better access to health, and that their parents were better equipped to educate them at home as well, their score increased by 26 points,
Wow.
right?
But that makes sense. I feel like
Of
that's
course, that
a
makes sense.
good
That's the thing,
increase.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, it feels like instinctively that's what I want to answer.
Hmm.
And then it heavily goes into um, supports the argument that, well, people's IQ test is more linked to their environment than their genetics, right? So researchers have suggested a wide array of environmental factor that might influence the IQ score. There's factors like social economical factors, social economical factors. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
saying that right?
You
Hmm. Jesus Christ.
just second guessing yourself
Yeah.
today.
So people who grew up in communities with lower socioeconomics have, for example, like fewer cultural opportunities, like going to the museum, for example, or
Hmm.
just less stimulating environment at home. Um, Not an equal access to healthcare, to nutrition, or the quality of education is not the same, right? So that's for the environmental factor. But beyond even analyzing the test results, the the study of IQ, the IQ research itself, scientifically speaking, is very flawed. So this was very complex. I found a wonderful article which I'll link into the show notes. But I won't go too deep into it, and it's kind of complex. It was really well explained and kind of hilarious also. Let me at least quote the article. It was okay. So if you all have the chance to read Intelligence, Complexity, and the Failed Science of IQ by Sean McClure, very good read. But basically, so IQ study rests only on correlation. Um, Basically, what it says is that the smarter a person is, the higher their IQ score. So there's a correlation between how smart a person is and how high their score is.
Yeah.
Already, how smart a person is very hard to define.
Hmm.
As we've established earlier, we can't define intelligence really well.
Yeah.
Now, correlation is a statistical relationship between two random variables. And I feel like we've all noticed because it's been hammered in our brains in math and in, in high school. Correlation does not imply causation,
Hmm.
right? So we know this also because there's countless examples of things being correlated that mean nothing. And I have a few fun ones here. All right. So there is a very strong correlation between the age of Miss America and murders by steam, hot vapor, and hot object that year.
Oh my god.
And like I'm looking at the chart. Wait, let me share my screen with you. This correlation is strong.
I'm like, where are you going with this? The age of Miss America.
Can you see? So
Yes.
basically, depending on the average age or the age of Miss America each year, there is a strong correlation with murders by steam, hot vapor, and hot objects.
That's insane.
Another one, divorce rate in Maine correlate with the per capita consumption of margarine. Margarine.
Margarine.
Margarine. That
That's so funny.
per capita cheese consumption correlate with the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets.
Wow, these numbers are quite high.
That's
800 deaths and
wait, I didn't even clock that at first. You're right. That's insane.
because the first one it was like 3 deaths, 2 deaths, 4 deaths. This is 800.
Maybe
And
like
you
toddlers,
fear unlocked. Oh yeah, true.
right? I would hope so. Um, but so as we can see, correlation doesn't mean there's anything there necessarily, right? This one is people who drown after falling out of a fish boat correlates with the marriage rate in Kentucky. So correlation is just an observation and an indication that maybe there's something there that should be looked into deeper, but also maybe not.
Hmm.
However, in IQ research, they stop at correlation and propose no explanation. Basically, they observe that the smarter a person is, quote unquote, the higher their IQ score is, but they never explain the why. They just say, well, because they're smart, they scored high. So that's how we measure intelligence now. So even if we had a definition of smart, they still need to explain why. They can't just say like, well, look, that's why. It's like if we go back to um, Miss America, and I told you like, hey, I have a scientific method for predicting exactly the age of Miss America next year, and you were like, oh, what is it? You just have to count the numbers of more murders by steam, hot vapor, hot object. And you were
That
like,
would be
what?
insane.
Why? And I'm like, what do you mean why? I just told you because they link with the age of Miss America. I mean, it's not an explanation. It's
Exactly.
definitely not scientific.
Yeah, it's just facts that happen to coincide.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, you know, I think another problem is that the field of psychology, which is the field in which IQ research is attributed, there's no like safeguards like the FDA has for medicine, for example. There's only like a code of ethics. And not only is that very flexible and changes over time, but it's just never held anyone back, really,
Hmm.
right? Often research on intelligence is on intelligence in general is very ideologically or politically motivated as well, or self-serving, right? It's just, which researcher wouldn't want to have that mirror that they are a very smart person.
Exactly. I think a lot of people also just look to do the IQ test and then they brag about their high score. And then they
Hmm.
use the low scores for like stuff like, oh, this criminal did this, because
Yeah,
they're dumb.
right. Interesting that you say that because I read in one of the papers I was reading that they've actually did research of they tested the Nobel Prize winners of, let's say, the 20 last years and their IQ tests.
Hmm.
They didn't publish the results because turns out it wasn't very significant.
Oh my god, that's really good. That
Right?
shows how much an IQ test really means.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, the you know the truth is that we just don't know much about intelligence at all. It's much more complex that we have even begun to understand and
Hmm.
to map out. But beyond that, the word itself might even be meaningless because we're talking about so many different things that it might serve us better to talk about narrower concept like processing speed or creative problem solving,
Hmm.
right? Advancement into artificial intelligence might also change our point of view. I also read that was fascinating. The group that is the most concerned by the advancement of artificial intelligence taking away their job is white men because
Finally giving them something to be scared of.
it's a intellectual privilege that they consider themselves holding right now.
Oh my god.
So it's coming for them in their mind, right?
Hmm.
Um, Speaking of artificial intelligence, for fun, I went to ask ChatGPT to define intelligence, and it said intelligence is a complex and multifaceted trait that involves the ability to acquire, understand, and apply knowledge and skills. It encompasses various cognitive abilities, problem solving capacities, learning capacities, reasoning skills, and adaptability into different situations. Intelligence is not a singular entity, but rather a combination of different mental faculties. There are several theories of intelligence, each emphasizing different aspects, and then it goes on to list a bunch of them. But I didn't have that for you because it was quite boring. And concludes by it's important to note that intelligence is as a broad and dynamic concept, and different cultures and societies may have Sanya,
Varying?
varying, changing, may have changing perspective of what
Amazing.
constitutes intelligence. Intelligence is also influenced by a combination of genetics and environmental factors and can be developed and enhanced through learning and experience.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then to close the chapter, I have this lovely quote by Robert Sternberg, who's a professor of psychology at Cornell University. And he says that about IQ. No, I'm sorry. Let's just go with the quote. In any society, people who are privileged make it so that people like them can stay privileged. So the IQ test turned out to correlate very highly with socioeconomic status, and it's sort of the way of laundering that. So basically, it's very convenient that IQ tests are excluding socio-economical status that are not representative of the people who are privileged,
Yeah.
because they can keep excluding them and keep promoting only people who are in their privileged group.
So crazy. Everything comes down to the white rich people.
Ugh, everything. It's like, what's that Wikipedia game? How many links to psychology, I think it is.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
You never played that game? Basically, you take any subject on Wikipedia and you click on the first blue link in every page, and you count how many times it brings you. Like, I think the average is like in 6 or 7 clicks, you're back to the page of psychology or philosophy. Philosophy, not psychology, philosophy.
That's insane.
Right?
Oh, I'm going to play that now.
Right? Yeah, that's what I had for you today.
I love it. That was the perfect way to sum out intelligence and why we're doing this podcast. Like, we're explaining things to each other, not because we think each other are stupid. We're just going to explain it to each other like we think we're stupid.
Exactly, because you know what? There's value into dumbing it down.
Well, I think I gained some IQ from today's episode. There's so much I didn't know.
I literally lost some mental abilities from explaining. I said
Okay,
I can barely finish my
let's
sentence.
go do an IQ test right now.
Yeah. We should have done it before and after.
Imagine you get a lower score, I get a higher score.
Right. Well, thank you for everyone for lending me your ear and for listening. And I hope you enjoyed.
And we hope you gain some IQ.
I hope you gained a few points.
We'll
All
see you
right.
next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Tell Me Like I'm Stupid is created and produced by us, Saniya and Thomas. You can follow us on Instagram at Tell Me Like I'm Stupid.
If you'd like to support us, please subscribe and review on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Our cover art was created by Ish. Find him on Instagram at h.e.e.s.h.
Thank you for listening.